The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
Tota sabelani, Emma tota sabelani, Emma tota mandani, ayo lengos, city lengos, Emma tota sabelani, Emma tota sabelani. Tota mamelani, Emma tota mamelani, Emma tota nandani, ayo lengos, city lengos, iyo lengos, Emma tota sabelani.
Greetings, beloved. Welcome to Faith Without Borders. I'm your host, Pastor Kelvin Sauls. It is a joy to be with you today as we celebrate Women's Day in the land of my birth, the Republic of South Africa. And today, as we come together, we want to remind you that here at Faith Without Borders, our mission is to engage in the education and the mobilization of multiracial and multireligious transnational movements for social equity and planetary justice globally. And so we're looking forward to our time together today as we welcome two multi-generational leaders from South Africa, women who will be sharing with us around Women's Day in South Africa, what happened, of course, on this day in 1956, but also what needs to happen today around women, what is happening today around the courageous leadership of women. So as we come together today, we will, of course, commemorate the National March of Women that took place. That is 20,000 courageous women that marched in 1956 on this day to petition against the discriminatory legislation that required Black South African persons to carry the pass identity document, which restricted freedom of movement for Black people during the years of apartheid. The women in 1956, 10,000 of them, left petitions containing more than 100,000 signatures and they stood silently outside the Prime Minister's door for 30 minutes. The Prime Minister then was Straydom, who was or is considered as the architect of apartheid in South Africa. They burst out in a protest song that was composed in honor of the occasion, Wathint'Abafazi Wathint'imbokodo, which means when you strike women, you have struck a rock. And we're going to talk about, what's happening around that right now. And so our time together today is to explore why women must still march today for gender equality and march against so many ongoing challenges that women face in South Africa, whether it is issues around equality, gender-based violence, and just so many other challenges that persist. And we have two individuals, from South Africa who will be joining us for this conversation. I'm so glad that they are with us. But we had to kick our time off today with that powerful song, Madoda Sabelani, by Loyiso Guyana. That has just become a theme song in South Africa in solidarity with women during this time that we face the moral challenge of gender-based violence in South Africa, as well as femicide that's going on, and we're going to be talking about that as well as the accomplishments of women, the leadership of women. And so I'm glad that we are able to have this show today on this day with Cynthia Jacobs, as well as Dora Marema, and glad that the two of them are able to join us, and they will tell us a little about who they are as we kick off. So I'm going to welcome Cynthia Jacobs, as well as Dora Marema. Good afternoon, it is there in South Africa. Good morning. It's here in Los Angeles. I'm still waking up, so if I go a little slow, bear with me, because I'm slowly but surely waking up. So y'all help a brother out, okay? So Cynthia, welcome. How are you doing?
Good afternoon from a windy South Africa. I'm doing awesome, and thank you very much for having me this afternoon here and morning by you.
Yes. Just to, for full disclosure, Cynthia is my niece, my oldest niece. So I've known her the longest of all my other nieces. And she's, the one I've known the longest. I've done a lot of work with her when she was part of Youth for Christ. She's in youth development. And so glad that she's always available to join. But also, she's an entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur, doing a lot for our community there. And then also, my sister, who is a senior fellow with the Atlantic Institute for Racial Equity. This is my sister. We've been together for more than a year now, connecting with other thought leaders and change makers and activists from South Africa and the United States as part of a dynamic and transformative fellowship, the Atlantic, a fellowship for racial equity. Dora Marema is here with us too. Dora, good afternoon, my sister.
Good morning to you and your listeners, and good afternoon to my own people here in South Africa, to my sister who's here on the call with me from South Africa. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Now, Dora, let me let you know, Cynthia lives in Klipspruit West. So I know you in Eldo's, where was it? Was this weekend or a couple of days ago?
Today.
Today. Right? Yeah. So she's just down over the bridge in Klipspruit West, where she and my brother, her parents live.
I was in Eldo's just this afternoon.
Yes,
just came back.
Yeah. So you'll share a little bit about that, at some point. But let's kick off. Dora, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you are doing? We share several passions together, the two of us. Of course, racial equity. The other passion that we also share, Dora, of course, is, environmental justice and planetary justice around that. And you do some amazing work in those two areas, But why don't you tell us a little bit about, what you do, the organizations that you are part of, and at the same time, what does today mean for you? What does Women's Day mean for you? But first, a little bit about what you do.
Thank you so much. I work with an organization called Gender CC Women for Climate Justice. Southern Africa. The organization I founded 11 years ago, which is part of a global network with the same name, which works on issues of climate justice and gender justice globally. I'm also part of an organization called Seed Community, which supports young women and girls to access higher education. And through that, we have set up a platform called Girls Talk Africa, which is a mentorship program by girls and for girls. I also run the Green Business College, which I also co-founded with a colleague and a friend of mine.
Wow, that's great. I think, when we hosted another webinar, I think there was somebody from Girl Talk on there who is in the Joburg area. I can't remember her name now, but she was on there and she did an excellent job representing you all, just to let you know. I'll find her.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll get her name and I'll let you know who it was, but she was excellent on that. We did a piece on faith-rooted community organizing, and she was on there from Girl Talk and did a great job. I want to say her name is Portia.
It wasn't Portia.
Portia, there you go. Yeah, Portia. Great.
Yeah, and she's here sitting next to me.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, tell her she did a great job on that webinar, and hopefully we get to see her and hear from her while she's hanging out with you.
Yes, yeah. No, I'll bring her on later on. Yeah.
That's great. Okay.
We were together. We were together in El Dorado Park.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's great. Cynthia, yes. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing, right now. I know you've done a lot, and we of course share the passion around youth development as well as social enterprises. And so tell us a little bit about what you're up to right now.
Well, I just launched my business, which is Idwala Business Enterprises. Idwala taken from the Zulu word, which means rock. And that is why this weekend or today means so much for me, because it is you strike a woman, you strike a rock. Idwala Business Enterprises, as I said, is my business. Linked to it is also a skills development program, because skills development is my passion, especially when it comes to the young people within the community within South Africa. So at the moment, my husband and I, we've launched our business, and he is the partner on my business. And I've also got my father who does steel work. My husband is in woodwork, so we do furnishing. That is my husband's passion, and I am his suitable helper. So in me living out my passion, I'm able to be that helper for my husband. So even as we celebrate Women's Month, it is an honor for me, because I am playing the role that I know that I've been called by when God created women. Yes. But most important, I've launched my own business, and I'm very excited because I could get young people on board as well to join in on the venture, but mainly to get them to live out their potential, because Idwala is about building legacy. And I've learned about building legacy through the women who marched on the 9th of August in 1956. And they have been my inspiration. Yeah. So that is what I'm doing currently.
All right. Yes. That's great. Look, I share your passion because it's all about, it's not just about making money, but also making a difference. It is not just about investment that comes with capital, but investment in human lives. And I really appreciate you remaining consistent, with your calling around investing in the lives of our young people. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited about that. And I'm glad that, I was able to, or I committed to make, my first purchase on Idwala by blessing one of my other nephews as he just moved into his home, with a housewarming gift, from, Idwala. So I'm excited about that. That's just awesome. Cynthia, tell us a little bit about, what does Women's Day mean to you? We know that, of course, you weren't there in 1956. I wasn't there in 1956, but here we are today. What does this day mean for you, given everything that's going on in South Africa right now? The question becomes, is there much to celebrate? Should this rather be a day of, mourning because of just what was happening with women in South Africa, the vulnerability, the insecurity, the exploitation that continues, to go on? What does this day mean for you?
As I said that, I just want to take it back to my business that Idwala means rock.
Mm-hmm.
And I took it from the women who marched on the 9th of August in 1956.
Mm-hmm.
Not just that, Idwala is about building legacy. When those women went out and they marched against the laws that was back then, they did it with us in mind, who is here today. As you rightfully said, that we weren't part of the marches back then. We weren't even born. I don't even think our parents thought of us at that point in time. But because those women took up the baton and they went out and they marched, we are living we are living in freedom. We cannot take that for granted. Yes, there's a lot of evils happening around us, but if they did not take up the baton, we would not have been able to be free in South Africa. But part of what they did is has given us the freedom that we have today. Yes, as we look at it, there's a lot that's happening even within our politics, where there's a lot not happening the way it's supposed to happen. And I think most people saw my post this morning where I say, yes, we are struggling with corruption. Yes, we are struggling with gender-based violence, but we cannot take away what those women did, because we have a level of freedom that we need to celebrate. Because if we allow the evils of today to get us down, then what they have fought for, it would be in vain. So my thing is that we should now rise up stronger. They have set the example. They have showed that women can do it. And we as women today cannot back down, because their example has been set. The legacy has been laid. The foundation of that legacy has been laid. And we as women need to arise. We need to take up the baton and we need to fight. Because if we lay down and say, yes, these things are happening and we are just going to accept it, then at the end of the day, their fight was in vain, and then we'll fail the next generation and the generations to come. Because I think I'm the third or the fourth generation from that women that marched. And if they did not stand up, we would not have been here. So my thing is, I take courage in it, and I am not going to lose hope. I'm going to take up the baton together with women that wants to take up the baton, and we are going to fight this thing, because our generation and their generations, we owe it to them. We need to leave a good legacy, so we cannot take things lying down.
Absolutely. We're standing certainly on the bold and broad shoulders of, those women and men who came after them. That's why we are able to be here today. Dora, let me come to you. What does this day mean for you? I know you are, like Cynthia, on the front lines of fighting for the equality of women, the protection of women. Your thoughts on what this day mean for you?
For me today, really, it's about reflecting at how many years now? Is it 64 years? 1956.
Yes.
Where this day come from, the essence of it. I think
Okay, I think we have some technical challenges with Dora. We're going to try and see if we can fix that. Cynthia, let me get to you, and then we'll get back to Dora. In terms of your reflection of, today, what lessons do you think you can draw from the women that march on that day in 1956? Any lessons that you can lift up? So we have some technical challenges. We'll come back to them. Let me lift up just a couple of, my favorite quotes about, African women, One that I love and use a lot is, if you educate a man, you educate an individual, but if you educate a woman, you educate a nation. That certainly speaks to the power of women in terms of how women see themselves as part of a community. So their orientation of themselves is not just as an individual, but it is a communal orientation, about themselves. And I always, celebrate, that particular quote, especially as Dora mentioned around my passion for education. I'm, proud to collaborate with, Africa University, my brother Tony and I, through our NGO in South Africa called One Love Trust. We work with Africa University in facilitating educational opportunities for South Africans from my community, to Africa University in Zimbabwe, which is a private United Methodist institution there. And so we are on our third leg now of students, graduating, from there. Our second group of students now, they are getting to be seniors starting the end of this month, and there is a first year student starting as well. So that student will start our third, group of students that we are investing in, and most of them are women. In fact, of the 5 that we have right now on this journey, 4 of them are women, and part of it is because of that particular quote around, when you educate a man, you educate an individual, but if you educate a woman, you educate a nation. Such is the power, of women, and we can never make the mistake of underestimating women, especially as men, thinking that if we put them down, we can lift each other, we can lift ourselves up. That is just not how it works, and that's why I always, appreciate the words of my mother that she taught us, when she always would say to us, your dad might be the neck of this home or the head of the house, but I'm the neck. And so the head can't do too much without the neck. And so we understood that she knew her role, but she also knew her power, and as we, as I remember her every day, those words, of, equality, of how we need to complement one another, these words of mutuality, is just so important around shared power as we continue to live into, God's plan for our lives. I think we have Dora back, right now. Dora, you were saying that this is a day of reflection for you. Any other thoughts you have?
Yes, for me, I just wanted to highlight that women are definitely shock absorbers of the current COVID crisis. They shield their children from hunger. They care for the sick while being expected to continue doing their daily jobs. And I think the reflection that I'm on is, what role can I play, or what is it that I can do to contribute to better the situation of women that is exacerbated by a growing gender-based violence?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we'll get to, the gender-based violence piece, and we'll talk about, just what, some of the root causes are, but also, what can be done about that, especially what men can do about it. So I'm looking forward to hearing from the two of you about that. The other question that I had, and I mentioned it to Cynthia, Dora, was what lessons, as we look at, these women that, marched under oppression, they marched under discrimination, much restriction, much risk that they took. What lessons, can you learn, or have you learned from the courage, of the women that marched on this day in 1956?
I think for me, what I can learn is the solidarity that women have got what it takes to be able to build bridges across culture, across class, across race. We are capable of doing that. And I think also what I'm learning is that we have the power. we have the power to be able to shift the discourse. And we can only do this when we are united. When we are united, we are able to leverage our power, leverage our connections, leverage our skills, our abilities to start shifting things and influencing policies and programs and rules that exist. We need to just really be able to be aware of the strength that we have in the numbers. We have the strength of the numbers. We need to capitalize on that, build solidarities, and raise our voice. And I think it will be heard because we have the numbers on our side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cynthia, you want to share a little bit about some of the lessons that you've learned, from the women that marched in 1956?
I think I would echo what Dora said. The one thing that stood out for me is the fact that women came out, went to the union buildings, and they went out confidently, taking up the baton and say that, you know what, no matter what we are faced with, if we stand together, we can make a change. And it is that unity that made the difference. So for me, it is the unity. It is them standing as one, standing in solidarity, coming, even if you look at the pictures, they're coming different races, rallying around. So it is that togetherness, that oneness, that unity, that Ubuntu, that really stood out for me. And I think if we as women would come together as one and put our mind to one cause, we will see the difference.
Absolutely. Dora, share a little bit when you started doing that about, we are in the middle of this, destructive and deadly pandemic called COVID-19. How is it affecting women? You kind of, touched on it a little bit because you and I know that, whether it's programs, running programs of relief on the front lines, as well as, discerning policy, for institutional change, women kind of connect both those ends as well as in between. How has COVID-19 affected women specifically in South Africa? Okay, let's, Dora will probably join.
Sorry,
back.
So as I have highlighted that the majority of the people who lost their jobs, and that was 3 million in South Africa, of the 3 million, 2 million are women, and I can imagine it's counting, right? Like it's continuing. And that the women are beginning to skip the meals here in South Africa to shield their children from the growing hunger. And that creates huge problems for these women. So there's not, a lot of women are facing tough economic situation. The children are spending most of the time at home. They need to make sure that they've got 3 meals, because if it was during, time when the kids were back at school, they would only have to plan for one meal. Then the other challenge is that when the survey looked at the people who has been getting this government grant, COVID-19 relief fund, majority is still men. Also at the UIF office, Unemployment Insurance Fund, a lot of claims are for men. So we're having a situation where a majority of the people who lost the jobs are women, and they are still the ones who are not being paid for the COVID-19 grant. We don't know the reason why. And also we need to understand whether is this prevalent in the rural areas or in the urban areas, or what is the situation. So this is what we know. And we know that the majority of the women are in the informal sector. Mm-hmm. They are not working formal jobs where they've got insurance and all of these things, or even UIF. So it tells you that they are not going to be able to get UIF because they are probably unregistered where they work. So this is a huge problem. They are caught up into this COVID, where they have to care for children and for the sick. And at the same time, they just don't have access to to food and to nutritious food. Their income has gone dramatically down, right? So that is the challenge that women are facing in this country.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Cynthia, can you share a little bit about, in your opinion, what are some of the challenges women face, especially in that South Joburg area that you are aware of, especially, young women or girls that you might be working with, that they are facing as a result of COVID-19?
The other evening, I had a discussion with my sister, and they are in the education, and she's in education, and she's out in Cape Town. And one thing that she said to me is like, Cynthia, this kids needs to go back to school. I know it's about women, but she said it is kids that needs to come back to school. When I asked her why, she's like, Cynthia, do you know how many kids are becoming pregnant during this time? So that is the one thing that our young women are faced with in the community, because now our youngsters do not have a place where they go to that kept them busy, that kept them from doing what they are not supposed to do. So one of the things that we are definitely seeing on the ground is that there are more youngsters that is falling pregnant during this time, which does not make it easy, because now you have a single mother having to take care of her kids, and she's just lost a job, and then the daughter come home being pregnant. And this is the realities that we are faced with. And then on the ground, things that we also see happening is that abuse is on the rise. I think we've seen it on the news, but living in the community, we see it more and more. So that is the one thing that our women are faced with, is abuse, and that teenage pregnancy is on the rise. Because our youngsters do not have things to do. Our young ladies do not have a place to go during this time.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I did a powerful podcast with some educators and the perspectives on just everything that's going on. Was just very varied, but very, very passionate about, what's happening around education, in South Africa. And as you mentioned again, looks like our girls, certainly are adversely, affected by that. Let's switch over, to the a lot of current challenges, whether it's, corruption, whether it is, gender-based violence, our democracy being put at risk because of current leadership. Dora, how is the ongoing social challenges that place our women and girls, making them very, very vulnerable, how is that impacting or affecting the social fabric, of, South Africa, right now, because of the insecurity, the vulnerability of women and girls, whether it is because of gender-based violence, or whether it is, because of what's happening, in the government as it relates to the fiscal irresponsibility, around corruption. Any thoughts around, just, how this is impacting women and therefore impacting the very fabric of the South African society?
Yeah, I think one of the most important thing is that all of these things are kind of have to be grounded in a family. So when you don't have a very stable family structure, where kids are able to be raised in a nurturing manner, where they're made to feel loved and protected and shielded, yeah. So that's where it starts, and then also obviously flows into the community. And I think the issue may not be very much be the girls. The issue may be the boys and the men. Or even the way that they are raised, not even in a very patriarchal manner, where they don't respect women and women's bodies, where a no definitely doesn't mean no. So that is something that I believe, if it were right, we wouldn't have to, ask for a huge budget from the Minister of Police to be able to have enough police on the ground, policing and arresting the perpetrators, because another part of this challenge of gender-based violence, it's a very hidden and silent one that happens in the homes. I think a research has been done that indicates that a lot of the people who violate young children, young girls, and those who are vulnerable, maybe disabled, who are not able to protect themselves, are people that know them. So they may be uncles, they may be neighbors, they may be friends, family friends. And I think that kind of a thing is not easy to police. It's not easy to be able to spot. You know, someone can be so nice and so generous, and the children could have, a girl child could have grown around them. And as a result, something like this happened just under the nose of the parents or the care workers, or sorry, the caregivers. So, because of this unequal society that we live in, that continues to be perpetuated. I mean, South Africa is one of the most unequal societies, where we have the rich that are richer and the poor that are poor, with no access to resources, women and families. And right now during COVID-19, most of the children are parenting themselves because the parents have to go out to work, and they are not able to afford extra help to be able to get their children looked after properly. So this is the challenge. This is a challenge, and there also lack of facilities in the communities where the children could be able to go, maybe the libraries, to get support and to be mentored and coached, purely because the resources are just being utilized, as you say, or diverted into things that we don't know about. So that's really the impact of this whole thing. And many of us have been touting for a basic income grant, that like a universal one that needs to be given to every citizen, to ensure that people, families that are not able to afford basic, necessities, whatever, they could be able to have that access to it, to cover the most basics, and have children being looked after properly, and raising their children in a way that they are able to respect each other, the boys in a way that they are nurtured and mentored to know that, when a woman says no, they say no, and that the violence is really reduced at the family level, and then in a community at the community level.
Yeah, absolutely. Cynthia, your thoughts on just how the ongoing vulnerability and insecurity of women just really threatens the very fabric of the South African society. Your thoughts on that as a young mother, one who has so many sisters, as well as nieces, cousins, etc. Your thoughts, as to the very threat to the fabric of South Africa, as we continue to delay equality for women, delay, not just passing laws, but also facilitating the implementation of these laws that protect women, as we move forward. Your thoughts, Cynthia?
Yes, I think for me it's really scary. It is scary that that we are faced with the demons that we are faced with in society, and especially in South Africa. As Dora rightfully said, that, or if I can say that, one of the things that I really struggled with when COVID hit and we had to go into isolation, or when we had to go into hardcore lockdown, one of my concerns were like, what's going to happen to the kids, to the women who suffer abuse? In some cases, we would find that men who abuse outside of the home will now start abusing those inside because there's nowhere else to go. So it is scary. And when we came out of the lockdown and we had all the stories that came forth, my worst fears came to pass, because we saw the rise, or we saw how gender-based violence increased during that time. And even now, as Dora rightfully said, kids are left home alone and they have to fend for themselves, especially the girls, and that makes it difficult. Then we have the corruption that is taking place, which just makes it more difficult for women, because what we've realized is that if you don't know the right people, you can have all the education, because I see it on the ground. You can have the right education, you can go to the best colleges, but if you don't know the people, because of the corruption that we are faced with, you will not be linked up to the opportunities that's out there. So this makes it even more difficult for women to find opportunities or go into opportunities. And it is scary with what is happening on the ground, because we see it firsthand on how women are struggling because of the communities that we live in, because of the government that we have currently that's not being responsible with what has been entrusted with them.
Yes. We're going to, in a minute transition to how your faith sustains you and what men can do, around the challenges of women, because clearly we are the problem, that we benefit from sexism. We have privilege because of patriarchy. And so I think it's important that we hear, from you as women, what we can do, as men. How can we stop being part of the problem and become part of the solution? And we're going to transition with some spoken word, from one who has done a lot of work in terms of, fighting gender-based violence in South Africa by way of his spoken word. That is Wathint'Abafazi, who happens to celebrate his birthday during this month. And so we want to, just salute him and say happy birthday, the people's poet. And here he is, with another group called Umkhonto the Firm, featuring Wathint'Abafazi, anti-gender violence song. Let us experience this, and then we'll continue our conversation, around celebrating Women's Day in the Republic of South Africa. Faith Without Borders.
Mama Enkosi, hey mama, hey mama, hey mama, mama Enkosi.
We are born of mothers. Mothers are precious. Ladies are precious. Women are precious. Women are caregivers by nature. They need protection and respect. Women are often abused and killed by men who claim to love them. Women are not punching bags. They need love and support. Magwalandini niyasilulaza. Violence against women and children is inhuman. Violence against women and children is taboo. Violence against women and children is ungodly. Phansi nendluzula, phansi nodlame. Real men do not confront but communicate. Real men don't confront but communicate. Real men don't eliminate but empower. Real men don't intimidate but inspire. Real men don't kill but instill kindness. Real men don't rape but recapture the moral high ground. Real men offer romance and roses. Real men don't terrorize but offer tender care. Apelani amadoda mbumbulu. Humanity say no to animals who masquerade as human beings. Say no to men who are worse than animals. Makwalandini ningamavaka. Makwalandini niasitumaza. Makwalandini niasilulasa. Makwalandini niasisambalaza. Yegana manyomfo nyomfo. Yegana manyomfo nyomfo. Ningongo muyayona. Yegana manyomfo nyomfo. Makwalandini.
Mzwakimbuli, that's my man, the people's poet. Thank you, sir. Happy birthday. Certainly, he and so many others, including an organization called ACT UP, has done a lot, of work and continue to do work around the role of men and boys in terms of the prevention of and intervention to gender-based violence in South Africa. Dora and Cynthia, we want to amplify the voices of women around what we as men can do around, the upliftment of women, the empowerment of women, the advancement of women, the protection of women and girls. Your thoughts as to what is it, on this, Women's Day and beyond, what is it we can do around prevention and intervention? I'll start with Dora and then we'll get to Cynthia. Dora, your thoughts on the role of men, in uplifting women.
From the foundation. So,
okay, so Dora, we didn't hear that first part. Can you start over again for us, please?
Yes, I was just saying that a lot of the problems or the challenges that we're facing around gender-based violence, like I said, if we want to be able to nip it in the bud, a lot of them start within the home. That's where everything starts. And then from then on, it's spread into the community. So if you are a man in your home, you maybe have got a wife or you've got sisters or you've got siblings, and you find yourself acting in a very patriarchal manner where you believe you are king and the women in your home are slaves or maids who have to do things for you, then that's where the problem starts. Because whomever young men who are around you, they're going to emulate exactly that and take it outside of the home. So that's why it's important to not just speak or march, but act. And the other part is when you are out there, and even teach those around you, your children or your sons, when they see someone, a man, acting in a very hostile manner to a woman, to a girl, to call them out, to actually call them out and not leave the thing to the women to be the ones that are standing up and calling out. It really starts there. For me, I believe if we want to nip this thing, and then we've got a lot of orphans and young men who have to parent themselves, who have to father themselves. If we've got men in the community, they need to stand up and step into the role of fathering and mentoring and coaching these young men in terms of how can men live in harmony with the women in their homes and also in their communities, and not to condone a behavior where men are getting away with subtle, because it happens in the workplaces, it happens on the streets, it happens in the public places, it happens in the homes, and these men are not being called out. And what does that say to the young women who are witnessing this? That you too, when you grow up, or you can start to do this. Or women's bodies are places or are objects that can be utilized for your own satisfaction. I believe that's where it starts. Mm-hmm. We need to, before we bring in the policing and the policy and all of these things, the fabric of our society needs to be restored. It needs to be restored. And it starts in my home. I'm a mother of boys here in this house. And if I raise my boys to become kings that needs to be served, and I'm from morning to noon to night, I'm standing up, cooking and cleaning up for them. And I'm showing them that this is how they need to grow up and treat their wives, or even their female counterparts, wherever they're going to find in university, everywhere they are. I need to lead by example.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. Clearly, what you're stating there is that men ought to become men of integrity. Men ought to become men of responsibility. And then, of course, men, have to be open, to accountability, as, we live up to, our manhood by avoiding toxic masculinity and, fatherhood, where needed and necessary. By way of, mentoring and other ways of accompanying, children, especially boys, during this time. You didn't say this, but I hear you add, or I can add this, Dora, in terms of just we have to really deal with this double standard, around how we talk with girls, how we talk with boys, or we only talk with girls and not talk with boys. As we transition to Cynthia for her thoughts, I certainly am of the belief that any tradition, African or otherwise, that contributes to the subjugation of women is not sacred and ought not to be upheld in any way. And I believe that, our ancestors, those who've gone before us, certainly will not condone what's happening to women and girls right now. And so to blame it on tradition, as far as I'm concerned, is blasphemous. To blame it on faith is blasphemous. To uphold any African or South African tradition that contributes to the discrimination and the marginalization of women, is not worthy of being upheld, nor is it a reflection of Ubuntu, something that we hold so sacred, in South Africa. Cynthia, your thoughts as to what we as men, can do. I know you have two beautiful boys, and a loving husband. Your thoughts around what boys can do, to uplift women and girls.
Well, from my side, I think that I'm blessed. But before I go to why I say that I'm blessed, what I've learned through the years is that if a good example is being set, whoever sees that example will walk in it. And I think I am blessed in that I grew up with men around me. We are 5 sisters, as you rightfully said, and our uncles are the ones that set the example for us. And because they set the example as to how men should treat their women or how women should be treated, that is what helped us as women to make good choices when we chose our husbands. You and your brother set the example for us. My father set the example for us. Many days I would look around and I would say, you know what? My father treated me like a queen. So the day when I went out and and somebody was hunting me, I could choose the right hunter because of the example that was set by my father firstly and by his brothers and even my cousins, because most of our cousins are males. So the example was set. The sad part about our communities is that we do not have the role models for my friends that surrounds me at all times. I would find they grew up with single parents. They grew up with a single parent. So they had only their mother that was there having to show them the ropes and things like that. But if they had a structure like we had a structure of family, I think the things and the choices they're making would have been better. So yes, it starts in the home. It starts with the examples that is being set by those whom you see as your role model. And I think that is what we are lacking within the community. We lack community male leaders that will say, come my boy, I will take you under your wing. Or mommy, you don't have to worry. Come, I will take your boy and I will walk this journey with him. It is time for our men to take responsibility. They need to take responsibility. They cannot go around just doing what they want to, sowing their seeds, and think that the world will be a better place in what they are doing. No, this thing is not going to remedy itself. It will take men to stand up and to take men or youngsters or men by the hands and say, come, I will mentor you. I will show you what is the right things to do, or what is the right thing to do. Then our male children will not find comfort in gangs as we know it, where we come from. They will not find comfort in somebody else's home where a lolly lounge is being kept. No, they will have the right role models. So we lack role models. We need our men to take up their role as men, and they need to take our men by the hand. And as you said, that I have 2 boys that I am raising, and I'm not going to lie, many days I fear because there's so much that is enticing them to do the wrong things. But it is the teachings in the home that I know that will sustain them, because I was taught that if you train a child in the way he should go, when he's old, he will not depart from it. So it is what I will teach them, and just pray that they will keep to the paths that they are being taught. And then also the example that their father would need to set or is setting, and how to treat a woman. So yes, it boils down to men in the community, men in leadership, to take boys by the hand and to show them what is the right thing to do, and when to do it, how to do it. It is men that needs to have a bonfire and sit around with boys and have real talks with them. I remember earlier this week I was having in my skills development group that I have started through Idwala, I have a young man and how he expresses himself. And I'm like, my boy, you don't have to talk that way. This is the way that you need to talk. And I'm talking about a boy that is turning 21 years. I have to teach him how to address women, how to address older people, because the example was not set. He did not have the men in his life to guide him. But yes, we need our men to take their rightful place as community leaders, as fathers in the home, and to be responsible, because it's not just about having fun and leaving the responsibility for us as women to then have to continue with what was left. Because it's only if the men set the example, the boys will follow in that footsteps.
Absolutely. Action certainly speaks louder than words, and clearly from one man to so many other men, we just have to come to terms with the fact that what makes us men of excellence, what makes us strong men, is not necessarily the size of our one-eyed brain, but the substance of our two-eyed brain. And a lot of you may not know what I mean by that, but yes, I did say it. Because I think, in a society where black bodies and the not just black bodies in general, but black women bodies, right, continues just to be objectified, whether it's in music videos, in music itself, as well as, in movies, that continues, to be a challenge for us, because, people in so many ways respond to the images that they see. And so all of our influencers, need to realize that a song might have a nice beat, but in so many ways, you see that that song, must also have a bold message, and that bold message must be about empowerment and upliftment, especially during this time when we are fighting, for the protection of black bodies, around the world. And so that's just so important that men realize and take their rightful place, as providers for their families in home and in community, as protectors of their families in home and in community, as well as the priests of their families in home and in community. So that depth of spirituality is just so important, for us to look at. Speaking of spirituality, I know the two of you are women of faith, and I'm a man of faith, and that's what I appreciate about, the two of you, the work that you are doing on the front lines, whether it is for climate justice, whether it is in youth development, whether it is in community upliftment, whether it is in entrepreneurship and social enterprises. You are driven by your faith. As a woman, how does your faith sustain you during these tumultuous and perilous times? I'll go with Cynthia first.
I must say that I am able to stand through this difficult times because of my faith. When we went into hardcore lockdown, we rallied the boys and Leandre around and said, we are going to have family altar every night. So for 5 days in a row, we have family altar. And one thing that I can say is that I can see the excitement in the boys just having to share the word, and their words kept us. Their eagerness to share the word of God and the types of messages that they brought out every night and is bringing out every night sustains our family. Like my boy saying one day, last week, he was like in the devotion, you know what, COVID is here, and it has stayed long, but it's not going to stay longer than what we think it is going to stay. And I believe that is prophecy in itself. And apart from the family altar that is keeping us, I think, and I know my favorite scripture.
Okay, looks like we're having a technical challenge there again. Let me quickly
come out of Philippians 4. What it is to have, and is it?
No, Cynthia, go ahead. We just had a little technical challenge there, so go ahead.
Okay. Yes, what I said, one of my favorite scriptures comes out of Philippians, where it says, I know what it is to have, and I do not know, and I know what it is not to have. I know what it is to live in want, and I know what it is to live in plenty. And I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That is the scripture that has kept me all my life. And I think even when we hit hardcore lockdown, it was like, what's going to happen with food? It's like we had to pull things together. But we found rest and we found peace in knowing that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. No matter what may have come our way during this time of COVID, it is God that has kept us. It is God that has sustained us. And He has been our strength. He has been our guide. And He has done amazing things through this time. And I think also one thing that really encouraged me during this time was the fact that we had to go into total silence and just had to focus on Him. With the world becoming more quieter, I personally experience God's audible voice. I could hear Him talk to us in the stillness. And that in itself was a blessing, just to be quiet, stop running around, especially as a mother, especially as a woman. Mm-hmm. This time has been a time where I just became quiet and just still and allowed God to be God, because He is the one that sustained us. He's the one that kept us, and I give Him all the glory for that, because I know I can do all things through Him who strengthens me.
Amen, amen. I know I will have the privilege at some point of reading some of those devotions that those two young men wrote, and looking forward to reading it and reflecting on it. So really appreciate that. Dora, as a woman of faith, how does your faith sustain you during this time?
I think for me, my faith is my, is my strength. I lean not on my own strength, but I lean on God and everything that He has planned for me. I also believe that whatever He started in our lives, He will complete it regardless of the situations that we find ourselves in. That even though we feel weak, we feel completely out of the water, like a fish could be outside the water, that He has us on the palm of His hand. So, being together with others, praying, fasting during this time, as my sister was saying, being in silence and being quiet is all that sustains me. Reading the word, fellowshipping, recording word of encouragement for others who might find themselves in a very, very tough situation, encouraging them. And, I feel that when I do that, I encourage myself, that I stand on His promises, that it doesn't matter what happens, all will work together for my good. So I stand. I think for me, if it wasn't for my relationship with the Lord, I don't know what I would have been. I also have known Him personally as Jehovah Rapha when He healed me and my family from COVID-19. I've known Him as Jehovah Jireh, the God that provides in the midst of lack, when people were losing their jobs, when people are losing their businesses and all these things that they have worked for many, many years. He has blessed me in so many ways that I couldn't even count. He's done so much for me in this time than He has done for me in the past. Wow. So, for me, it's knowing that I just need to be still, because the one I trust is very trustworthy and is not changed by circumstances. What He said He will do, He will always do it. And ours is just to trust Him and know that all of these things didn't take Him by surprise. He knew about COVID-19. Yes. He knows everything, and we need to trust Him. Like a child whom will run up, to you when you come back from work. Even though you've got pains, you feel weak, He doesn't care how you feel. He's going to run knowing that mommy is on the other side to catch you. And I think that's how we should be like children. Trust Him completely with everything that we have, more especially right now, because He wants us to have an encounter with Him. He will do it for His own. He will bless us for His glory, so that the world can know that there is a God in heaven who is still in authority and will never relinquish His authority.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much. From August the 9th, 1956 to August the 9th, 2020, we still have some courageous women who are ready and able and willing to be on the front lines, fighting for equality and equity, fighting for justice in South Africa. And so we stand on the bold and broad shoulders of those who've gone before us. And indeed, it is just a joy for me to be connected, with, Cynthia and Dora. And Dora, I just let you know, I've always told you have the name of my sister, my only sister. So it was like hanging out with family today. Dora, let me thank you for the work that you started supporting in my hometown of El Dorado Park. And just to let you know, we are following up on that work, with the folk at the Army of Yahweh and the Flames of Fire, to see how we can be supportive, as we begin to turn our folk to the land, to begin to see how we can continue to be about planting the food so that we can provide, planting the vegetables so that we can provide food for folk because of the challenges that people are facing in South Africa. Cynthia Jacobs, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Say hi to the family for me. Much love to you. Dora, we didn't get Portia on, but tell Portia we're going to get her on pretty soon, and for her to continue, doing the work that she's doing, around Girls Talk. It's been a joy to celebrate Women's Day in the land of my birth, South Africa, here at Faith Without Borders. And we will leave you today once again with a song preceded by this quote. One of my favorite journalists and TV reporters, anchors, Jane Vergie, born and raised in Kenya, CNN introduced me to her, and this is a quote that she says sustains her from, a Nobel laureate from Kenya, Wangari Maathai. This is what Wangari said, and of course, as we know, she has, transitioned to the ancestral cloud of witnesses. Wangari Maathai says, "In the course of history, there comes a time when humanity is called to shift to a new level of consciousness, to reach higher moral ground. A time when we have to shed our fear and give hope to each other. That time is now." From the voice of a powerful woman as we celebrate Women's Day. Once again, we're going to close with Loyiso Guyana as he once again sings for us. And we're going to play the video this time because of the images that this video has. Singing once again, Madoda Sabelani. This has been Faith Without Borders, beloved. Be safe, be well, peace out.
Madoda Sabelani, Madoda Sabelani, Madoda Nandani, Iolengus, City Lengos, Madoda Sabelani, Madoda Sabelani. Madoda Mamelani, Madoda Mamelani, Madoda Nandani, Iolengus, City Lengus, Iolengus, Madoda Sabelani, Madoda Sabelani. Madoda Sabelani, Madoda Sabelani, Madoda Nandani, Madoda Sabelani, Madoda Sabelani.